Hello, my name is Gordon MacDonald. I am Chief Technical Officer of the British Gliding Association, and I've now been repairing sailplanes of all types, particularly wooden types, for over 40 years. And what I want to impart to you now is what the British Gliding Association has done about aging aircraft, particularly with a view to wooden airframes in this case, and the problems we found over the years and what we have done to effectively manage these aircraft so they can effectively be inspected, repaired as required, or if it's not economic, taken out of service. First of all, there was quite a big cultural issue when this first happened. When we first started finding glue problems, a lot of owners didn't want to acknowledge that they might have their valuable gliding assets, the gliders, might not be economic to carry on flying with. So there is a lot of, from an owner and inspector standpoint, you've got to be aware there's a lot of commercial pressures in the system to actually look on things a bit more leniently than has been known in some other areas, because a lot of aircraft were scrapped when we started doing formal glue inspections. And occasionally we get second opinions in, and we've learnt a lot in the process, not just about glue inspection, but also the pressures on inspectors and owners that this can involve. So we started having problems with wooden sailplanes right back immediately after the Second World War. We have air accident investigation reports where sailplanes failed due to glue failure. And it became well known in the 1940s, 50s, 60s and 70s that certain types of aircraft were more prone to glue problems than others, and certain types of glues were as well. And in 2004 we had an accident with a two-seat sailplane. Unfortunately it was a fatal accident, and when that glider hit the ground, a number of parts of the glider failed that should not have failed. And the subsequent investigation raised a few alarm bells, thinking, well, okay, an airlawn spar, for instance, shouldn't come detached along the glue line when it hits the ground. So out of that accident came a glue inspection regime starting in 2004, and it's very generic. It was on the whole a whole series of wooden sailplanes, not just one particular make, and that was issue 1. And from that we found enough information to start doing targeted inspections on particular types of sailplanes and particular areas of those sailplanes. And over the last 18 years, this document has evolved from issue 1 to issue 6. There will be an issue 7 probably in the next 6 months, principally because we now have a lot more information, videos in particular, on what to look for, how to see things. It makes it a little bit more foolproof to finding problems, because the reality is a lot of engineers nowadays have very little inspection history or experience with wood, because if depending on your background in history, you might not have maintained wooden aircraft of any type. So we're up to version 6 now, and this version 6 we're particularly interested in sort of K1, K2, K3, K4, K6, K7, K8, K10, K15, K14, K16, K18 series of Sliker wooden sailplanes. These in 2004, when they first came out, were all popular types in the UK. So to give you some idea, we had about 550 of those aircraft in 2004 in the system, and since 2004 about 250 of them have now been removed from service, principally through glue inspection problems. A few have had accidents, so on, but most of them have been found to have a glue problem that was not economic to fix. And what this inspection gave us was we were able to find the problems before they became flight safety risks. And we effectively managed it. The initial glue inspection process was every 5 years, it's now every 3 years. 3 years works quite well. We're not, at the end of the 3-year process, we're not finding major glue problems where you think, oh, that should not be flying. So the safety is being assured on 3 years at the moment. But if that changes, we can reduce the glue inspection process to even shorter. And of course, more and more times now, with modern equipment, especially the advent in the last 5-10 years of cheap sort of 5.5mm endoscope type cameras that cost less than £20 that just talk to your phone, it's revolutionised how we can look at things. We can get into lots of bits of the sailplane without having to cut holes very, very easily. And most of these wooden gliders do actually lend themselves to that very well. So that's made a huge difference. So that's page 1 of the document, and on page 2 we have a picture of a typical cavitine wing, and there that shows the areas where we look at very closely and we have been known to find problems. We have found lots of problems around the air brake areas, principally I think because the gliders get left out in the rain occasionally, and occasionally there aren't enough drain holes in there, and so what you tend to find is wood can pool in the bottom of the brake boxes, and glue failure tends to go around the area. Wood rot as well. We found some wood rot in one or two aircraft. So first of all, behind the spar we have 3 main holes in the fabric, and what we've done on most of these sailplanes is actually put one of those nylon rings you can buy from Aircraft Spruce, and that way you don't have to keep cutting holes every year or whenever you want to do the inspections. You can literally just unpeel the fabric, or what we now do is actually we cover them with Fablon type stuff with a big bond there, at least 50 millimeters, and that way whenever we want to get in here to look at the glue inside the wing, or for any other reason actually, we can literally just unpeel the Fablon. No paintwork required, do what we have to do, put a new piece of Fablon on it. So there's no commercial pressures into not doing glue inspections. It's actually easy access. We did have a tiny hole, 6mm hole in the D-box near the spar, so it wasn't structural. Nowadays we're finding less and less that's not needed, because we now have a hole at the root rib, and with modern sort of carbon fibre fishing type poles and everything else, we can get a pole up the wing, motor up the wing, with side-looking cameras between the ribsticks without damaging the ribsticks, and so you can do a really thorough D-box inspection nowadays without having to cut holes. And the other area of great interest is actually the spar of the ailerons and the hinges. We often find glue failure starts at the areas of highest stress. And so we've had a number of situations where the hinges are starting to show signs of degradation and movement, and sure enough you often take a close look, and the whole fin spar is often not particularly well attached. It's quite an easy fix. You just take the plywood off the top and glue on new plywood, but you've got to spot the problem before you can fix the problem. And we have a very, very, very close look at all the root ribs. Glue failure causing a problem in flight is very unlikely from something like a main spar itself or something like that. It's far more likely to happen from a very much smaller primary component, like maybe an elevator root rib or something like that failing, rather than actually a big item failing. The other thing is, when we cut these holes in the trailing edge there, we get feeler gauges into the spar booms and try and make sure that there's no deep situation where the plywood skins are coming away from the spars. In the process of doing this, actually, we have also found occasional manufacturing defects, which we fixed as well en route. Right, next one, and you can see this picture is really just all text. And it goes into the detail of exactly what we're looking for, how much force to apply. So there it says past ½ kilo of force, detail on what to do. If there's a problem, who to contact. In this case, if there's a problem, they can contact me for further instructions. I'm CTO, Chief Technical Officer. The D-box leading inspection, if no faults are found during inspection. then you can then return the aircraft to service. And what to do with aircraft with diagonal spar and the trailing edge, typically K-13s, K-7s, that sort of thing. And some aircraft like K-6s, what to do when there's no drag spar on those. Here we have, as I said, gave an example earlier of one of the smaller parts of the glider that can actually fail. We're not aware of any of these failing in flight, but we certainly found a lot of base ribs on the fins not very well attached. For some reason, the base is normally just the base rib and not the other ribs inside the fins. They're sound normally. So why that is, maybe it's just because they're more exposed, because they're further out, not entirely sure. And you can see here an example of failure on, this is a K8 fin in fact, and that's a very typical failure. And here on this last picture, this is a K-13 lower stern post, so the very bottom part of the K-13 fin, that plugs into a metal U-shaped channel, which isn't in this picture. This one hadn't been removed for 50 years. The glider was built, I think, in 1968, and this problem was found around about 2014, 2015. So where the wood is encapsulated in the metal U bracket at the bottom of the fin and bolted on, when they took the fin off as part of the glue inspection, they found actually the bolts had more or less disappeared, and the whole bottom of the woodwork that was inside the metal bracket had literally just rotted away. And again, in flight there were no indications of any problems, but this is about the worst we saw of the entire fleet we dismantled, and obviously this was fixed and put back into service. But the other issue you find, and I haven't got a photo of it here, is corrosion at the base rib of the metalwork as well. A lot of corrosion, which in some cases required welding on of new brackets there. So it's not just about glue failure, aging aircraft, it's about the general condition of the metal, the wood, the bolts, nuts and bolts that hold it together. Because most of these things nobody thought they'd last 50, 60 years. So corrosion protection wasn't high on the agenda. Okay. And here we have a page that concentrates really on inspecting the rudders and elevators. We have had a lot of glue failure problems in rudders and elevators, particularly elevators. And those of you who follow Slacker sailplanes will realise a new aero directive came out last year, asking people to check the elevators. But for the first time, they did what the BJ have been doing for a very long time, and that was actually to check them whilst being stressed. Where you're more likely to find a problem. Just a visual inspection doesn't always find the problem. You need to actually check the part you're inspecting whilst it's being stressed to see if there's any movement, because you've got to stress the joint to see if it's stuck. Just looking at a joint that isn't stuck but is still together, it won't look like a failed joint. And often we found the problems on the elevators and rudder leading edges failing were caused entirely by not glue failure per se, but by the glue joint failing because the plywood had never had the mould release agent removed from it. So for whatever reason, the plywoods generally on these areas were not well stuck. The glue itself wasn't a problem, and we actually found the trailing edge joints, which is built with the same glue, where they would have been properly prepared prior to the joint, were sound. So that was an interesting exercise. But again, the only way to test these was actually by checking them with stress. And here we have another picture of an elevator, and you can see the way it just comes literally unstuck, unpeeled. And when you take all the biscuits, the gut itself holding the elevator on, and the fabric actually plays an important part of holding this together if the glue starts to fail. And we again stress the joints by trying to put a feeler gauge inside it, and if it just pops off, that's bad news. So again, we investigated this many years ago now, and the very first time we did these inspections we found lots of minor problems and some major problems, but now we've done it, we repeat this process every 3 years, and after the first inspection, the problems have been very minor. We found the problems, we've either fixed the problems or the aircraft's been scrapped, and the fixed aircraft are carrying on life, being inspected. And on the next inspections, we're finding we've managed to sort of halt the problem to a degree by better quality storage, and also by fixing a lot of the problems in the first inspection. But we are managing a degrading fleet of gliders. A lot of these glue joints are not going to last forever, and we know that, and the owners now know that. There's a lot of commercial pressure on the owners not to want to scrap their gliders, but ultimately, it's not their choice. At the annual maintenance, it has to be inspected properly, and the owners are not allowed to sign out their own annual maintenance, unless, of course, they're a qualified aircraft engineer. Right, here we have two examples of main spars, both out of K13. The one on the right, you can see the laminations very clearly, and you can see each glue lamination. That's carrot, 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 carrot. Carrot is a pink glue, very popular pre-Second World War, used throughout the process. It's changed formulations a few times over the years. And what we have found is, after we scrap a wing, principally because it's usually had, or other parts of the aircraft had glue failure, we now ask owners to take a section of spar out and take the shear webs off and drive a chisel down each shear web, and to see whether the glue joint fails or see whether the wood joint fails. And so far we've done that on over 10 aircraft, and one of them had been sat in a very, very damp trailer for over 10 years when it being abandoned because it wasn't economic to keep it flying. And so far not a single problem has been found with glue failure in the main spar cap itself, which is very assuring, because this is the only part of the aircraft we can't actually inspect non-destructively. On the left we've got another K13 main spar, but this one was not destroyed by glue failure. This was destroyed by spinning in, and this was built in 1986, a much more recent glue joint compared to the one on the right. And first thing is, you can tell there's different glues inside it. So 7 laminations, that's carrot, the carrot's pink, carrot, Aerodux. Aerodux is a resorcinal glue that's pretty good. I've never ever seen an Aerodux joint fail. They're very waterproof, they're very chemical proof as well. You can put paint strip on them and it doesn't appear to affect them too much. And then you have carrot, 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 and Aerodux. So here we have a K13 main spar built with 2 different types of glue. And that's the problem we have. If we have a known Aerodux joint, we don't need to worry about it too much. We know it's going to be a sound joint. But the carrot ones we do have to worry about. And we've got no firm data as to what the main spars are made of, other than that most of them are made with carrot or a mixture of carrot and Aerodux. And finally, at the end of every inspection, well, at the end of the first primary inspection, we ask an audit of the aircraft glue types, what it's made with, and particularly the areas they're built with, so whether it's first of all serviceable or not serviceable. Is it made of carrot, Aerodux, or other types of glue? The reality is a lot of the gliders over the years have had repairs, various other types. Some gliders have got epoxy glues in them, some have used a British glue called Aerolite, so on, or unable to determine the glues. Now, all because you don't know what the glue type is, it doesn't mean to say it's not a good glue. So if you're unable to determine what the glue is, as long as it's a sound joint, carry on for at least another 3 years. And as I said earlier, the problems we're finding is that you're very, very unlikely to have a big part fail. It's the small parts that are more likely to cause problems. And the good news is they're easy to inspect. And so, for instance, like an elevator root rib. And since we made this inspection, Slikers have now effectively copied what we've done, which is a very good thing. And we now have an annual inspection required on the elevator root ribs. Fin root ribs are very important. And what we're going to do next, probably in version 7 of this document, there'll be a lot more information on how to physically do the inspection, videos, stuff like that. And we're going to be having a closer look at the fins of the aircraft we can't remove the fins from. So typically the K6s and K2s, although in the whole UK we now only have one K2 flying, and I believe we have no K4s left flying. They've all died through glue failure. And we'll be having a much closer look at all the tailplanes, the insides of the tailplanes. So that'll be version 7 probably coming out next year sometime. I hope you found this informative. If ever you have any questions, feel free to contact me at the British Gliding Association. My name is Gordon MacDonald, and yeah, I hope you have a good day.